with our congregational family, those in our need of such prayers of healing at this time. To these names we also offer Ann Becker, Jacob Blas, Kathy Doyle, Dylan Din, Barbara Feldman, Seth Gelwasser, Billy Grover, Norman Grover, Don Harvey, Maxine Kotler, Andrews Krause, Dennis Landsberg, Phyllis Lewis, Lori Miller, Louis Montiel, Eric Nortman, Steve Perla, Domingo Polanco, Sandy Schuster, Martin Schwartz, Carol Scholl, Marlene Slingbaum, Steve Slingbaum, Phyllis Thurman, Garo Vamos, Peter Vesey, Ellen Walker, Joe Valence, Larry Smith, and Fred Lippman. Again, our prayer of healing on Misher Berach may be found on page 253.
Sheberach Avotenu Mekor Avracha Imotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu Mekor Avracha Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
It's 4th of July, as we all know, and 4th of July conjures up so many memories. A lot of us, as much as we are blessed to be here this evening, because it coincided with Shabbat, most of us have memories of the 4th of July, being in our backyards, being in our friends' backyards, being with family and friends, and having a little bit of cookout and enjoying just being outside in our backyards, around the grill, and enjoying life. And so I have to tell you, I love my backyard. In fact, my backyard is probably the primary reason why Michelle and myself, my wife, chose our home to begin with. We had moved, as many of you know, from a rural area, and we were thrilled to find a home where our backyard directly faces, believe it or not, the Everglades. There's just something beautiful and majestic about being outside and being beside one of not only Florida's, but one of America's great ecological treasures. But there was one thing I hadn't fully considered: our neighbors. And by neighbors, I mean reptiles. And by reptiles, I mean alligators. This past week, Michelle pointed out that one of our neighbors had apparently taken up residence just right outside our front door. Then yesterday, she mentioned how our neighbor, the alligator, had decided to bring a friend. As I thought about these new neighbors, I couldn't help but wonder, with just a bit of irony, that not far from us, deep in the wilderness, in my backyard, in our backyard is alligator Alcatraz. Now, I wish it were just a nickname, but it's not. It's a real place. It's a detention camp. It got established quickly, almost overnight, without an environmental review, without consulting either of the native people, indigenous people from those lands, the American Indians, didn't consult the Seminoles, and it's less than a mile from their land. And they have lived in that land long, thousands of years before any of us, before our ancestors, before those even who sacrificed and devoted themselves to forming our country stepped ashore to our land. The site spans 39 square miles inside the Big Cypress National Preserve. It's a militarized swamp compound. Already there are 500 to 1,000 detainees at Alligator Alcatraz. These are real people living, being held in tents. And the plan is to scale it up to 5,000 beds. In fact, some are saying maybe even double that. It's ringed by nearly 6 miles, 28,000 feet, monitored by barbed wire, monitored by over 200 surveillance cameras, guarded by ICE agents, Florida law enforcement, private contractors, and National Guard troops. This is more, though, than just about one facility in our backyard of Florida. Our president visited the site himself and praised it as a model for the whole country. So Florida's site, my friends, it's just the first domino. Camp Blanding in northern Florida, some of you may have heard of it, is already being scouted for expansion. Texas detains 12,000 immigrants in its own state-run compounds. In fact, there's a residential center being planned for holding 2,400 people on top of that. And they too have deployed their own state guards. Louisiana holds 3,700 people, Georgia 1,600 people. Arizona and California detain another 5,600. Across the U.S., there are more than 56,000 people that are currently being detained by ICE. And most, 3 out of 4, are there not for criminal charges, but for perhaps violating civil immigration laws. When a government starts building prison camps, strips away legal protections, and floods lands, sacred lands, preserved lands, with barbed wire, with electric floodlights, my concern, as terrible as it is to the immigrants, my concern is that it's not only targeting immigrants, it's perhaps telling all of us, stay quiet, or we could be next. What is the legal basis for this? When our country was being founded and celebrating one of its earliest anniversaries of independence, America's second president, John Adams, looked out at our country spinning towards chaos. Our country was in its infancy, vulnerable. France was seizing American ships, and an undeclared naval war had begun. Adam and the Federalists believed that the Republic faced an existential danger. They feared that immigrants from France, but not only France, also Ireland, would bring radical politics with them. And to Adams, this wasn't just about vulnerability in the country, it was about deep destabilization. And so Adam promoted and then signed the Alien Sedition Acts. These laws allowed the government to detain and deport non-citizens that the government saw as dangerous, and to then criminalize false and malicious and scandalous speech. Against whom? Against the president or against Congress. It was framed as national security, but the Alien Sedition Acts were clearly also tools of political dominance, of control. It became a lightning rod, debated and argued not only in Congress but throughout the country. It prosecuted people, including newspaper editors, and even, if you can believe it, a sitting member of Congress. Thomas Jefferson saw the whole matter differently from Adams. Jefferson and his supporters felt the laws not only went after immigrants, but were ways of suppressing dissent. And so to defend the free press, even ones that criticized, even ones that were hostile, he felt that this was essential to our democracy. And so the election was in part a referendum on liberty versus security versus order. Jefferson won. Adam lost. But Jefferson let the sedition portion of the act go a little bit longer for a few months, but then it expired, and he let it expire. He pardoned the convicted, and he even reimbursed their fines for the injustice that it incurred. But they did leave in the Alien Enemies Act, which is only to be applied during wartime, only to citizens of hostile nations, and it has rarely been invoked. The War of 1812, the World Wars of I and II, and again, more recently, in most of our lifetimes, on 9/11. The Sedition Act fell because it aimed inward, all at citizens and at critics. But the Alien Enemies Act endured because it aimed outward, not inward, and only specified in times of war. That distinction between fear and speech, a fear of invasion, still shapes the boundary between our national defense and our constitutional protections, and what some would consider overreach. And today, my friends, that line is being blurred. It was invoked recently, even though there's no declared war. And federal judges have questioned whether certain gang members could be qualified as an enemy nation. But still, legal scholars note that using a wartime act in peacetime sidesteps due process protections. The Sedition Act died because it criminalized speech. The Alien Acts lived because it was for war. But what's new and unprecedented is being used when no war exists, stretching far beyond its original intent. This week, we read in our Parsha about chukat. A chok in Jewish tradition is a law that defies, some would say, some explanation. This is why the portion begins with that famous story of the red heifer. Why a red heifer? Judaism accepts a few of these such laws of chokim. And like the red heifer, we have other mitzvot, the banning of wool and linen being intertwined, or even some would say certain laws of kashrut. But even in these cases, there exists within the chokim a larger framework of justice, of holiness, and of compassion. And without that framework, a chok becomes dangerous. Without that framework, a chok asks for obedience, not conscience. Even our most mysterious laws of the chokim, they're never tethered from the morality and ethics which are so dear to our tradition. They must live with us. They must cultivate our souls. They live within a covenantal framework, our framework that always, alongside of all of our laws, reaches for human dignity. It's not only a moral and theological insight, my friends. This too is a foundation of our freedom, of our liberty, of the social contract of America. What happens when law is severed from justice? What happens when it's severed from mercy? What happens when it's severed from truth? And when our strangers become the enemy amongst us, who will be left to defend the stranger? In America, legitimate law rests not on a command set on high, but on reason, on conscience, on that same moral foundation as Judaism. What happens when that liberty, when that law erodes? Not necessarily through open violence, but through quiet steps, legally determined. My concern on this 4th of July is how certain powers can expand. And what starts as temporary can become permanent. And what starts towards the immigrant can affect us all. And what starts as an emergency can become precedent. We've seen this before. These camps are technically legal. They are authorized under existing immigration statutes, authorized under our civic codes, and I would say even perhaps to a certain degree of executive discretion. But legality is not the same thing as moral legitimacy. These laws that were created to protect us were never meant to justify military compounds in our backyard or indefinite holding zones for thousands of people. And yet, they're here. And once we accept camps as normal, as part of our everyday life, as routine, as just part of our existence as Americans, what else might we accept? And this is where the true jeopardy lies. Is the ground being prepared? Is the infrastructure being built? Mass detention, no trial, emergency powers, national threat. A chok without covenant is not justice. Chukim are surrounded by ethical guardrails. Our moral compass teaches us that we should never submit to an order, to an obedience that's unquestioned, especially when it defies righteousness. And so we, as Americans and our nation, cannot live in fear of militarized camps where we obey without asking why, without wrestling, without warning. It will mistake law for legitimacy. It will mistake law for virtue. It will provide not for peace, but for disaster. Adams offered us a great quote. Liberty, once lost, is gone forever. Our liberty is not lost, my friends, in a single moment. It's lost slowly through habit, through fear, through unchecked obedience. Our history of July 4th is not only in our textbooks, it's here for us, and it's a warning for today. The strength of America lies not in just waving our flags and eating hot dogs and hamburgers and sitting in our backyards, although that is truly important. Our freedom is preserved by sacrifice, by the constant courage that we have to defend our freedom. That is not just our history. That, my friends, is our legacy. And so, on this July 4th, the freedom that we hold dear, from our bima to our backyards, and everywhere, our moral responsibility to uphold. And let us say, Amen. Let us rise for the adoration on page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגול עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 285, let the time not be distant, O God, will also turn to you in love. When corruption and evil should give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye, O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
And so now we turn to the mourner's Kaddish as we remember in loving memory those who have passed at this season and years beforehand. Dorothy Bezell, Mildred Berger, Charlotte Burson, Lloyd Belowski, Irving Botwinick, James Breakstone, Florence Brazell, Moriel Goodman, Campbell, Adele Dublin, Ruben Duckstein, Maurice Ordenfrod, Sol Finkel, Bruce Freisner, Aaron Glickman, Joe Goldman, Sarah Gordon, Robert Gottlieb, Luna Gracia, Irving Green, Phil Gross, Alfred Hess, Alexander Koritz, Jack Kuznets, Isidore Levitt, Lillian Loberfeld, Bella Lynn, Flora Margolin, Joseph McCullough, Samuel Arnrott, Bertha Press, Martin Rabinowitz, Rebecca Rickel, Yetta Rothfarb, Louis Rudnick, Blanche Rudolph, Sam Segi, Ida Schneider, Wolf Silver, Louis Trope, Julian Weber, Jules Wexler, Theda Weiss, and Miriam Wolf. Are there any additions to the mourners list for this Shabbat Eve? I'd ask all mourners who are present to please rise. And the remainder of the congregation, please rise in benevolent solidarity as we turn to the mourners Kaddish on page 294. Yikadal v'kadash shmei Rabbah, b'amad divrach hirutei v'amlech malchutei, b'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, b'gala v'zman kariv yimru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'lam omei amaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yinasei, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudesha b'richu, le'lam min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram be'ama v'yimru amen. Yesh lama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom v'imramav v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who mourn, to which we offer. Amen. Friends, please be seated as we have some Shabbat and July 4th greetings and some announcements from our past president, David Topping.
Shabbat Shalom and happy 4th of July. Rabbi, I think I know why you had those two visitors behind your house, probably because of that University of Miami IBIS sticker that was in your window, and they want to make sure they know who's boss. Please join Rabbi tomorrow morning at 9:30 for Torah study. It seems like a very good weekend if you haven't attended before to come by. Again, 9:30 tomorrow morning. And we'll be back here at 7:30 next Friday, the 11th of July, for Shabbat services. Please attend. As we find ourselves in the summer months, we realize that the high holidays are fast approaching, and if you haven't done so already, please read through the correspondence that you received in your regular mail a couple of weeks ago regarding the annual book of life cycles and other important information. And please don't hesitate to call the temple office with any questions you have. If you're looking for a good coffee table book, search for Borrowed Spotlight, Stories of Holocaust Survivors. The portrait book pairs survivors with high-profile members of the entertainment industry. What celebrities will you see? You'll see Cindy Crawford, George Stephanopoulos, Sheryl Sandberg, Chelsea Handler, Jennifer Gardner, just to name a few. But the real stars are, of course, the survivors, each one with their own haunting story. So let's celebrate them this Independence Day. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Let us rise as we consecrate our Shabbat with Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו בשבת קודשו. באהבה וברצון הניחי לנו זיכרון למעשה בראשית. כי יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת, אותנו קידשת מכל שבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
L'chaim. Cantor, we missed you not only for your voice, but also for all that you are and all that you serve to our congregation, and it's wonderful to have you home from Israel and home safe. And let us continue with our Hamotzi. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
And we conclude our service with a lifting up of a hymn which requires no introduction.
God bless America. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
On this Shabbat, as we celebrate and enjoy our freedoms together, Let us remember that we are Jews and we are Americans and that we bow before no king. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.